Our clients really come from all sorts of industries, but they have one thing in common. They've reached a certain level of success, but they know they're overspending in certain areas. And so that's where we come in, is to help them keep more of the money that they make.
We become an extension of your team, and our role is really to reduce your spend across your expense categories.
Once you've had the chance to work with us, you gain financial peace knowing that your expenses are well taken care of, so you can have the business you truly desire.
Hey y'all, welcome back. We're here for another ASOTU Edge webinar. Today we are joined by our friends at StrategicSource talking about the best dealership cost reductions for 2025. Joining us is going to be Doug Austin. He is the founder and chairman of StrategicSource, and Matthew Haiken. He is the retailer principal at Prestige Auto Group.
All right, if you've ever looked at your monthly bank statement and gone, where did that $7.99 charge come from, wondering which service you've been paying for that you couldn't remember that you started paying for, and it just kind of became regular routine, you know the problem of not just a personal finance, but a business finance that gets just extended and reached into so many areas. That's what we're going to be talking about today. I'm excited about it because I think when you get an outside view on, look at that expense, look at that opportunity, look at those places where you can find net revenue in places that don't take a lot of team impact. It's a big piece of the way that business can be refined and make sure they're resilient for upswings and downturns in market volatility. And that's something that we've been dealing with over the last 5 years for sure. So I'm excited to bring in the experts because they know more about this than I do. And I can't wait to learn about how to exactly think about this from the general manager, dealer principal, owner seat when it comes to running the dealership. So let's go ahead and bring in Doug and Matt. Doug, Matt, thank you so much for joining me here today. I'm excited to learn from you all, kind of see what you've been able to discover through working together. But I want to start with Matt. Give me a little bit of idea, store you're at, a little bit about the store, size of store, and what your role is there.
Sure. Thanks for having me. Matthew Haiken from the Prestige Collection Auto Group. We are in northern New Jersey, just outside of New York City, and we have 2 Volvo dealerships, Polestar and Lincoln.
Nice. Awesome. Yeah. Well, first of all, I love that you have a snowboard in the back with the Volvo on it. That's a lot of, you just get up on that every once in a while.
That is, it's like 20 years old. I'm sure technology has advanced in the snowboard.
Quite a bit. Yeah. Doug, give us a little background on you and especially when it comes to StrategicSource, where you all saw the opportunity initially to kind of like solve pain points the dealers were maybe experiencing.
Yeah, Doug Austin, founder of StrategicSource. We've been in this space for about 25 years, and we kind of got into dealerships accidentally back in 2000. My background, I came out of the airline business after the military, but airline and retail. And my background was in purchasing and logistics, warehousing and whatnot. But we knew that there was an opportunity to help clients reduce the cost of either direct expenses or indirect. And in the automotive space, we learned quickly that about 95% of the dealers do not have purchasing departments. And we started running into some 20 groups, were invited to speak in front of others, and really started developing a dealership practice early 2000s. And today we're about 48 people. We're based in Minnesota. We work for small dealers, large dealers. We've worked with mega groups, and we've worked with some OEMs as well, trying to help them cut costs, save time, and improve profitability. That's really the value proposition.
Yeah, when I think about this, it's always interesting to me, and Matt, maybe you can speak, Matthew, maybe you can speak to this a bit, is when we look at a dealership from a like gross and net revenue perspective, we have so much focus on the service and sales department, and we staff toward that end goal. But when it comes to some of the things that maybe businesses, even with the same type of revenue structure, with different sales targets or service targets or personnel requirements, there are marketing departments and procurement and purchasing departments and things that maybe in other verticals, because of the focus, are kind of normal. And Doug, you were calling that out. When you kind of learned about the opportunity, Matthew, to look at purchasing as a process, what was unique to you and what were you attempting to solve?
Well, first of all, like, I was brought up in the business where procurement was sport for the dealer principal. So, the poor copier guy would come in and we would negotiate like 4 printer copiers for one store. And we would just sit there and say, now it's our turn to be the customer, and beat this poor salesman up so bad. When he walked away, we as a dealer felt we were so amazing and we got the best deal, and nobody can negotiate this deal the way we negotiated the deal. That's just a metaphor for how I was brought up doing procurement, and then we'd sign the contract, and the contract would maybe get to the bottom of my desk. It wouldn't make it to my controller's desk. It wasn't schedulized. We didn't know when the renewal was up. And this poor, guy that we beat up would take it because he'd say, he's a dealer. He probably won't know to auto renew when the auto renew is up, and probably won't know this. But as dealers, we're very, prideful, and we think nobody could get a better deal than us. We want to go to that 20 group and say, we got the best deal on the alignment machine. Believe it or not, NADA is kind of built for that, to prey on these dealers that just love the art of negotiating a deal. So that's kind of how I was brought up into the business, and that's how I did procurement for all our dealerships. In today's day and age, really, you've got the scale of expense and profitability. And when you think of expense, you think of people and you think of floor plan. You really don't think of the unsexy services. And again, I think that's where we decided to partner with StrategicSource and figure out a better way for procurement contracts.
That's awesome. Doug, we've got a slide here to kind of kick off, like what's the reality of the state of the union when you look across dealerships when it comes to how many expenses and the cost and how much time is associated with sourcing and procurement here. We'll go to the next slide, actually. There.
Yeah. If you want, there you go. When we first started this out, Kyle, we were ignorant enough to think, and I remember doing this. We were walking through a Saturn dealership in 2000.
There it is.
We came onto there and we thought dealers have 30 expense categories. And over the years, we've learned that they have more than any other vertical industry that we've been in. We've been in schools, manufacturing, restaurants, but dealers have more expense categories to manage than virtually anyone else. And I think part of the reason is there's 50 alone that I can identify in marketing. So when you look at all of the different buckets of things that a dealer will buy, there's about 130 of them out there. We've also learned, because we've done this about 1,500 times for dealers, that they will spend as much as 5% of their top line sales. So a $100 million group will spend $5 million on those 130 expense categories. The other thing we've learned is that they will overpay by 25%. There's a group out there, a purchasing group out in your neck of the woods called Aberdeen. And they did a study years ago that said groups without purchasing departments will tend to overpay by 25%. In our history, we've seen the lowest was 21% back in 2009 after the big meltdown. Dealers started really focusing on purchasing.
Sure.
But last year we saw 32%. So wow. I think it told us that in 2024, dealers were taking their eye off the ball again. We also know that if you're going to source effectively, do it the right way, there are 8 steps to go through. And if you follow those 8 steps, it takes about 80 hours to source one category. Well, if you apply that math to 130 categories, there's no way a dealer is going to have the time and the expertise to do that. We know that 95% of the dealers do not have purchasing departments. And we also know, based on the work that we've done, that we can move the needle on net profit by about 1.5% to 2%, all things being equal. So there is a good opportunity. And then the question you have to ask, well, how many cars do I need to sell to move the needle another 1.5% to 2%? And it's quite a bit, depending on the business.
Sure. So let's go through it real quick, because I think that's, a lot of people are like, no, I have five areas of expenses, right? These 5, and then payroll and building, right? But it's a lot deeper. I think we're looking at this one dealer, and there were 72 potential areas to look for cost reductions. Talk us through like how you prioritize these, and then the share back conversation as it comes to with the dealer.
Yeah. So keep in mind, there's about 130 categories out there. The title of the webinar was, we were going to show dealers where the opportunities are. So my sourcing director gave me a list of all the projects that we've worked this year, and I just cut it off at 72. There's 24 right here. And if you look at the left-hand side, you'll see that was the cost savings that we generated in those categories. So if you look at the first line, transportation, shipping, and recovery. So this is an audit function. And we were able to pull in about 85% cost savings there, returning those dollars back to the dealer. And we did that 40 times in 12 months. So that number off to the right, and that's important too, because in Matt's case, I'm sure he beat the snot out of that dealer, on that printer copier, and he probably did a good job. But the reality is Matt will do that probably once every 3 years. And we might do that category 50 times a year. That doesn't mean we know it all, but we've got a lot of data points now that become that help us get in hand grenade range relative to pricing and terms, if that makes sense.
Well, the relativity here, as we always say, is, and I remember when I was on the desk, like, you train your salespeople, and it's, you do this, anywhere between 15 and 30 times a month. That customer's walking in through the door doing it once every 3 years.
That's right.
Right? It's the same logic. And as long as we can wrap our heads around that, it actually makes a ton of sense, right?
And I think that the frequency by which we do these categories, I mean, years ago, 25 years ago when we started, I was doing a lot of the sourcing, trying to learn this. And I would tell you today, I don't have a clue. My team, they did credit card processing 130 times last year. There is no way that even I as the owner of this business would know that. But
know where to start.
Yeah, they become pretty good at it. And every category is different. Some take 5 days to do. Some might take, like print, because it's all custom manufacturing. That might take 45 days or 60 days by the time you get all the quotes in. And then all the percentages are different. So this slide just shows another 24 in each grid there. So we've got 72 categories identified. And the idea here is that for dealers who have this deck, if you want to know where the biggest bang for the buck is going to be, take a look at these, because there's a lot of categories on here that you may not have thought of. And,
right.
Everybody thinks of services and supplies. They think of office supplies and shop supplies. Well, that's 2 out of 130. There's many more areas, many more rocks to uncover. So,
Matt, when it comes to like receiving this communication back and then the decision-making matrix, because what I also know about dealers is there's a lot of relationship when it comes to your suppliers that is also balance loaded with like, okay, yeah, I might be paying a little bit more, but also on the other side, I get, how are you how are you as a dealer consuming that information and then able to like go, we're going to make the decision here, maybe not there.
Yeah, no, I'm really able to kind of separate myself in a really transparent way for that. So let's say you have a customer, and this happens all the time. Customer is the shirt guy. He wants to sell you the polos for spring for your salespeople. And they're like, let's make a deal. And by the way, I want you to buy my shirts. It's fantastic. We use a third-party procurement company. They're great people. They've been with us a long time. They're based in Minnesota. Here is Monica. She's my procurement manager. Here's her email. Send her all the information. They'll put it together. They'll put together a competitive proposal for us, and then they'll present it to me, and I can decide. So it kind of makes me still the great, community member. And this way I have a third party who's really going to take a look at the details and make sure that we're getting the best deal. And, there's a lot of times where the team is presenting something and their pricing might be more, but we value a relationship and we value service. And that happens all the time. But what doesn't happen all the time is when you have a long-standing relationship with a vendor, how do you make sure they're competitive, the market's there, and it's not just about pricing, it's about the level of service agreement, the contracts, the fine print, all of that stuff, which really gives us the opportunity to get another perspective on as well.
Yeah, and I think that that's something that we don't think about a lot. We a lot of times think there's the product, there's the price, and that's what we map to. But in a lot of these, there's like different SLAs, different coverages, different on in our business, we do an event every year, right? And we realized a little bit too late, like our second year in, that all these events people know things about how to write these contracts that everybody's okay putting in, but until you ask, they just leave it out, right? And it's like those little idiosyncrasies about contract negotiation that it's like everybody would just put it in pretty much for free, but they start with it out because it's their opportunity for gain, right? So it sounds like similar.
Yeah, and then again, there are a lot of opportunities in our business for somebody to, get some sort of spiff or, I don't know, gratuity. I don't know what the politically correct way to say. They're getting greased, right? Yeah. So someone comes in, so again, this gives us an even playing ground where we have the opportunity to say, listen, you're not going to pay our people. We want the best deal. And also keeps everyone, and that happens in every industry, especially in the event industry. I know there's a lot of greasing that goes on.
Yeah, and if I might just add to that, Matt, we use the same term in Minnesota, grease. But we have a requirement here in our company that we don't take a penny from a supplier, not even a cup of coffee. So, we really don't want to hang out with suppliers, but if we have to, if we take them to dinner or something, we're picking up the check. But and that's a little bit different. There are other purchasing models out there where, the purchasing group does get a cut of the action or get greased or however you want to put it. We don't. So we're agnostic. And going back to Matt's point, We also know that there are a lot of relationships with dealers, and because they're selling you their HVAC service or their uniforms or whatever, we know that 72% of the dealers want to stay with their incumbents. So, and we're agnostic about the supplier. So, if Matt says, Doug, I really don't want to change uniform companies, but give me the best pricing. Well, quite honestly, that's the fastest way to get the job done. Just renegotiate with the vendor, get better pricing, get better terms. You might end up paying a little bit more than if you went out for quote, but it's far less disruptive to the business to keep using a supplier you trust than to blow it up and then to bring a new one in. Mm-hmm. That makes sense?
That's absolutely makes sense. I want to go through so we don't miss this, what some of the results and the timeline can look like, because I think this to me could sometimes, you start to hear 130, 72, right? You hear these big numbers and the number of types of things, and some take 3 days, some take 45, and it starts to seem like this big project that it's, a lot of times it's like, well, let me get through this project and then we'll start this one. What's the project look like? What's the initial project look like for someone that wants to deep dive like this? What are the results? What can they expect on the other side as far as kind of baseline? And maybe we can look at, there's a couple of slides here to one dealer's results. Yeah.
So one of the first things that we do with any client, and I can't move forward unless we do a kind of a 12-month review, but we look at and envision, if you will, this chart with 130 categories on it that shows what Matt spent last year. And then we plug in a category that says what we think we might be able to achieve. And out of that output, we came up with a plan and we showed it to Matt and his team, and they said, okay, guys, go. Well, this is really pretty unusual. This is an actual scorecard from Matt's group from from February of this year, just through August. And if you look down here, we did about 18 projects already, and that in itself is, pretty good. We've gone through a lot of work, but what's even more important is Matt and his team have made decisions on many of them. So and have moved the needle. So if you look at the client decision, we've got pending in one case that may have changed already. You got a case where we did a project on compliance management and he declined. And the reason they declined is because they decided to shut the service off. They didn't need it at all. So, but there's another project there. We came up with a goose egg. We had no savings. So that just says Matt and his team are really doing a good job. So we're going to run into that. We're going to hit singles, doubles, triples. You can see the percent benefit, and then you can also see the dollar benefit. And what we've done in just a few short months, and this is a 3-year look, but we've got about $886,000 in savings kind of queued up. Now, I hope that within a couple more months that number will be north of $1 million, and depending on the opportunity here, we'll be knocking on the door of $2 million. But the point is that there are a lot of categories out there. They're all different. And if the dealer is willing to make decisions, which in this case, Matt is, you can move pretty doggone quickly.
Yeah.
But I appreciate
the thing
that.
I know about Matt is Matthew, you make decisions quickly. That's for sure.
Sometimes I feel like I'm not moving quick enough, but again, this is like working with their team. It's surgery. It's not just like you really have to, okay, pick 3 items. Okay, pick 3 items. And I have a list and I'll keep going back to that list and I write that list down. But yeah, sometimes I feel like I'm not moving fast enough. And then, sometimes I'm ready to move fast.
Matthew, one question I have, because when you do, especially bigger projects like this, one of the things that I'm always wondering is, because this is not just you that's in procurement, we decentralize a lot of this as dealers and we put it on people that maybe aren't used to this, right? Maybe the GSM has to go get his thing, the fixed ops director has to go get his thing. Have you already seen some things that have been lifted off, maybe teammates that were having to manage that relationship, and all of a sudden they don't have that task, and all of a sudden they get to do more of their work?
I'd say that's a challenge, right? Because let's just say you have, the vendors really know how to prey on the management and staff of the dealership. So where you would think that everybody is totally motivated to help lower the expenses, and they are, and they care, and they want lower expenses, but everybody is so afraid that they're going to piss off the relationship that they've had for so long with the pentless dent repair guy in town, or the bumper guy in town, or the wheel guy in town, or the windshield guy in town. And, everybody will share stories about, well, I remember we left this guy for a period of time and how bad the dents were. We had to redo them over. So yeah, you do get a lot of blocking from your key management. And again, it's what Doug said earlier. I mean, 70, 80% of the time, we're going to go with the same vendor we're using, but we're going to be strategic about this the same way that your OEM is strategic about when they have to make decisions, or any publicly traded company. And we're not going to just make stupid decisions. And, and that's the bottom line. So, I think that's definitely a challenge. But on the flip side, when we're trying to figure out, Doug and his team might say, we have great experience with, vendor A and vendor B. We could also say, okay, who else should we put on this list?
Right.
Get everyone's input. And I do, depending on what we're talking about, I do bring in different people from my COO and from my CFO. We do bring in departmental managers when it pertains to them.
And it's important to do that. There are a lot of influencers out there that if you try to suggest to them, you need to change the shop supply company, that isn't usually going to work. It needs to be their idea. The better way is, would you be open to us quoting with this company? And if they say yes, then we're golden. But don't tell them how to do their job. And the other thing I would say too, to Matt's point, the relationships are very important, but go back to what Reagan said in the mid 80s, trust but verify, right? So going out to quote and getting some benchmarks is a healthy thing to do. And you can find out just, what is that relationship costing me today? Is it beneficial, or is it, am I leaving?
Yeah, you're just doing a cost benefit analysis to the relationship then. Yeah. Exactly. Yeah, it's a really smart way. Well, Doug, Matthew, super insightful. I think even just expanding our minds to this is how much opportunity we have and how to dive into it. Some of the ways of strategically thinking how to bring in your team, but also go to market with a procurement mindset instead of receiving sales inquiries is just a different way of approaching the market. So, Doug, thanks for the work that you've done. Matthew, thanks for giving us the time to kind of look into the way that you guys have done this, and appreciate you joining us on this Edge webinar.
Thank you, Matt.
Thank you.
Thanks, Kyle.
Our clients really come from all sorts of industries, but they have one thing in common. They've reached a certain level of success, but they know they're overspending in certain areas. And so that's where we come in, is to help them keep more of the money that they make.
We become an extension of your team, and our role is really to reduce your spend across your expense categories.
Once you've had the chance to work with us, you gain financial peace knowing that your expenses are well taken care of, so you can have the business you truly desire.
All right, y'all, that's a wrap. Thank you so much for spending some time with us today. If you want to watch this again or share it with a friend, you can go to our website, www.asotu.com. Go ahead and click on media and drop down to webinars. Thanks so much, and we'll see you next time.